You gon' know it when I slide, yeah.
Hey everybody, welcome to Know Your Enemy, a show by your friends at the TLP Pod where we talk tactics and data to help you get started analyzing our upcoming Triumph games as a fan. Each week we'll look at some key data points that make our opponents unique, how their formations set them up for success, and what can be done to expose some of their weaknesses. And for our first episode, we're going to be looking at none other than our opponent this weekend, Forward Madison. Forward Madison is one of Greenville's oldest foes, with 13 matches between the teams, 7 draws across those 13 matches, with Greenville currently ahead with 4 wins and 2 losses. And obviously, we're going to be looking to continue our winning ways after a great 1-0 Open Cup win against SC United Bantams on Wednesday evening in Columbia. We're going to be heading back to Paladin Stadium. You're going to want to be there on Saturday, and it's going to be an incredible match. This early in the season, obviously, sometimes it can be tough to determine what a team really wants to do with and without the ball because they've only got a few games under their belt. Maybe they're still trying out different things after preseason and they aren't quite settled. But again, luckily, we're talking about Forward Madison. They rarely change. Shout out to Matt Glazer. And so we've got a lot of information to go off. Let's get started. For the past few seasons and this season, Forward Madison have set up in a 3-4-3 formation, which looks like this. That's 1 striker, 2 wingers who typically sit a little more central, though they can go into wider spaces, 2 central midfielders who share the progressive and defensive responsibilities, 2 wing backs who have responsibility of the entire wide area of the field on each side, 3 center backs, and quite obviously a goalie. The 3-4-3 is a really versatile formation. I love it a lot. It allows teams to create superiorities and passing angles all over the field. You see little triangles everywhere. And this allows them to get into dangerous areas quickly with technical players on the half turn, in tight spaces, creating 1-2s to get the ball forward very quickly, while also being really solid in defense. That being said, the thing I want to focus on today doesn't really have that much to do with attack. Traditionally, Forward Madison, believe it or not, have been very solid defensively. They're actually one of the most solid teams defensively in USL League One if their fans can scrub 2022 out of their brains, which I don't think has happened yet, but that's none of my business. Against Tormenta, again, Forward Madison's 3-4-3 attacking shape very quickly dropped into a 5-4-1 when they lost the ball and couldn't press to win it back. What's interesting about the 5-4-1 is that it's completely based on central solidity, and we'll talk more about that in a second. But what's important about that is that it forces the wingers typically to drop pretty deep to create a wall with those central midfielders that is really tough to break down. They don't want to be exposed in central areas. They don't want people to pass through the middle. They don't want passes between the lines so that, someone like Sebastian Velasquez could get the ball in between the lines, turn and dribble at a center back, forcing them to have a weird body shape or something like that. They are really compact, really tight lines, and their wingers typically sit really deep so that people can basically pass around them. This is a really important thing that we're going to look at against Forward Madison because those wingers, they have a responsibility to press out as well, but because they sit so deep, they often have to make really long pressing runs that can open up a lot of spaces in central areas. And in fact, Tormenta would try to expose that by having Lombardi kind of sit more centrally in the midfield to create overload centrally, while people like Devin Boyce or Derek Gebhardt were pressing up. Basically, it forces the wingers to be really smart about their pressing runs. So often they sit home and wait for really good moments, unless they're just being reckless. Which leads to one thing that's unique about Forward Madison is this stat known as PPDA, or passes per defensive action. Basically, the point of a PPDA, or passes per defensive action, is that it just measures how many passes a team allows an opponent to make before they attempt an intervention. Like whether that's a successful tackle, interception, or a failed tackle or failed interception. Just how many passes they allow on average before they decide to make an intervention. And across every single season in USL League One, Madison has had among the lowest press in the league. In 2023, they allowed an average of 14.26 passes per defensive action, which was the second lowest in the league, only beat by Charlotte Independence. This season, they actually, for their one game in USL League One, allowed 14.28 passes per defensive action on average. And so this is something that we see with them. They're going to allow teams to have the ball. They want to force teams to pass the ball wide. They want to, basically get the ball along the touchline so that their winger and their wingback can create numerical superiorities and defend well against the touchline, or force teams to pass long, where they also have numerical superiorities along the back line. And so they've got these really solid numerical superiorities defensively all across this formation. And if they can prevent teams from passing through the middle, they don't really need to press. They can just sit kind of deep. And so that's something that Forward Madison really, really focuses on. What's unique about this season with Forward Madison is the signing of Devin Boyce and the moving of Derek Gebhard from wingback to winger. And in my opinion, these guys are two of the most high work rate players in League One, which makes this formation much more formidable in the press. These guys can make those long pressing runs much more quickly, which puts offenses on skates a little bit. It forces them to be more smart. It forces them to pass very quickly, to force these pressing runs out and create space behind them. But it also helps them transition very quickly, which we'll talk more about in just a moment. But one of the key things that you'll be looking for the Triumph to do is kind of pulling those wingers out, forcing them into these long pressing runs that open up space centrally, forcing central midfielders to shift over and cover, creating space between the lines, finding really technical players in those central areas to help break it down and get the ball through the thirds into the box. The thing with these two is if they are able to make these pressing runs, which both of them again are really high work rate, high stamina, quick players, if they are able to make those pressing runs and recover the ball, they're able to break really quickly. And that 5-4-1 immediately becomes a 3-4-3 again and looks really, really dangerous. And so that's something to keep an eye on. Despite the fact that they have those really low PPDA numbers, they don't often make very many interventions against attacking opponents. This year with Derek Gebhard and Devin Boyce, on a moment's notice, those wingers can press up and make some really, really quick runs that can cause some trouble, like they did against Tormenta on Saturday. On top of that, another person who has a really important role in the press are the wingbacks. So when the team loses the ball, or when the attacking team is in really deep spaces, this formation typically allows the wingbacks to press up even as high as the opposition fullback to kind of force the ball back, force them into useless possession, or to win the ball back high up the field. And that is going to be, for me, where there's going to be a lot of space to work. You'll see in this clip here that Forward Madison, typically when they get forward, when they have the ball, they like to be protagonists with the ball. They like to hold on to it and possess it through the thirds if they can't counter quickly. You're going to see that one really interesting thing about their formation is that their number 6 and John Murphy and their other midfielder, Jimmy Villalobos, were on the same vertical line in the attack. And so there's a lot of space in these half spaces where our attacking players can sit in and kind of have a lot of space to work with if we win the ball back in deeper areas that allow us to counter quickly, especially if the opposing wing backs are pushing up really high and trying to force a turnover again. We just have to be technical. We have to turn quickly, and we have to break quickly to get out of these spots so that we can put the center backs on the back foot, force them to face their goal and recover quickly. And honestly, this works out well for our strikers, our wingers in particular, because they're really technical players, really quick players, and they can force center backs into really uncomfortable situations. But if we aren't able to do that, obviously we still have to play, right? Forward Madison is going to sit back. They're going to allow us to have the ball. So what do? One easy way to counteract Forward Madison's deep line defense is just to move the ball quickly, shifting the defense, forcing them to try and recover on either side can open up space in central areas for players like Sebastian Velasquez or Liam McKinnon or Zion Scarlett to get a hold of the ball, turn, move, and help distribute it elsewhere so that we can create dangerous attacking, almost transition-like moments that force Forward Madison again to recover quickly and force them into dangerous situations. Forward Madison is obviously going to be a really tough opponent. They have players like Galindrez and Cheney, who are two of the leading goal scorers in League One. You can see already how dangerous they can be on break when these guys are clicking. They shoot quickly. They're dangerous in transition. They can pop up anywhere. And so the Triumph have a lot of work to do. But if we stand any chance of winning this game on Saturday, which we definitely do as per usual, we're either going to have to break out of those spaces and transition quickly before Forward Madison has the opportunity to get back into their 5-4-1 by playing passes in behind their wingbacks in wide areas, breaking out of those central spaces, or moving the ball quickly, shifting the defense back and forward across, forcing those long pressing runs from those wingers so that we can find spaces in those central areas to work and dribble the ball, which Tormenta saw some success with. It's going to be an exciting match. Our team is, again, going to be really electric. There's been a lot of energy already, and even though we didn't score probably enough on Wednesday, there was enough to be excited about technically and security-wise as far as moving the ball forward, that we can get done what needs to be done to break down this Forward Madison defense that allows so many passes per defensive action in favor of solidity. What are your thoughts? Let us know. Can't wait to see you at Paladin Stadium on Saturday against Forward Madison FC. Peace.
You gon' know it when I slide, yeah.